Alright, you guys, today I'm going to talk about an incredibly cool movie called Loving Vincent. If you don't know a little bit about me, I work in the film industry, kind of low level right now, but I'm working my way up, and one way to get better in the film industry is to understand films. But today we're looking at absolutely an art film. It's called Loving Vincent, and it was entirely hand painted by over 100 artists. I think Saturday, July 27th is when Vincent van Gogh was either born or he killed himself. I think that's when he killed himself. I should look that up real quick. Please hold. Okay, yes. He killed himself on July 29th. And then he was born on March 30th. Very sad that he killed himself. It's one of the saddest things ever, because I think his paintings have so much life. It's very sad. Anyway, he was 37 when he died, and he was a Dutch painter. This movie is so beautiful, by the way. And he's got this brother whose name is Theo. We're kind of similar. Theo Van Gogh. Van Gogh, as my boyfriend would tell me. Anyway, Theo is a bit frustrated because Mr. Vincent, he's just been getting into fights. Oh, yeah, no, there's this, other character who's kind of like the fish out of water who gets, Van Gogh's life explained to him. He's been getting into fights, and his father is this, mailman. But there's this undelivered letter from Vincent to Theo. So they want to give it to Theo, especially given that his brother died. They just think it's the right thing to do. And the mailman father is like, maybe this will just get my son to stop fighting. I need to send my son on a journey, and a journey to this family that has a member who killed himself due to mental illness. And maybe my son will recognize his mental illness and get help. So, anyway, it was super cool to be in a film like this on the bright side. Vincent gave his ear in a napkin to a girl, which is pretty crazy. I think the girl's a prostitute too, so gotta pay somehow, you know? And he wanted to pay with a black market ear. Kids were throwing stones at Vincent. That's pretty awful. They were trying to, steal his painting stuff, I guess, which I guess is probably pretty expensive at the time. It's pretty great that art has only gotten cheaper, but there's more and more artists, and it's easier and easier to get paid. Still lots of work. It's lots of work to get paid anyway, even though you need it for life. Doesn't really make sense to me either. But anyway, so then Van Gogh went to what they call a nut house, which is like a psychiatric ward, essentially. And they kind of forced him to get help. He was discharged, which doesn't mean that he was cured or that he stayed cured. He was about calm and normal for 6 weeks. Clouds move, super cool here. And then they discuss if sadness is contagious, because that's something they always say is about the effect of suicide, that for whatever reason, somebody kills themselves, it spreads more sadness, thus everybody starts to do more suicide attempts because they've been sad. And I do imagine that would do a number on people. I honestly think even my suicide attempts have done a number on people's psyche. I think it's a really sad thing to deny the beautiful gift of life. Sometimes the system is so hard. So anyway, they want to discuss Van Gogh's life, not death. There was no suicide note. His brother Theo kept asking why he would do it. I cried because it was so sad. He didn't understand his brother why he waited 6 months later and shot himself by his easel. I guess Vincent was very unhappy in his childhood, which is a very hard thing to overcome. He had a hard time fitting in the family, and while we know him as a big artist, he never really succeeded, so that's a bit sad. Theo was the oldest, but he's not the first. I guess their family had a lot of miscarriages. They had a stillborn older brother. That was probably very hard on their family. And that, I guess, older brother was somebody that, while he had died, he died perfect, because people can, kind of project everything they wanted their child to be on a child that is, miscarried, you know? So Vincent felt like he could never measure up, and he was struggling to be what he wanted to be. And in a way, he was born too soon, which is also sad. So Vincent got kind of thrown out in disgrace. I guess he was a missionary for a time. Potentially thought about being a pastor. I mean, I honestly do feel like art is a religion, and also is all about finding meaning in life and an endless journey of learning and self-discovery. So Theo wanted to fight alongside of him, so he bought a brush for the first time at 28. That's older than me. That's 3 years older than me. But Theo supported him. I want more animation like this too. I mean, this movie is just so breathtaking. Just watch it. Come back to my review and watch it. I need the money. Anyway, you see that Vincent was also a bit of a drunkard. He was drinking crazy. He was kind of becoming a martyr for his art. And the doctors took like paintings for their fee for Vincent. They go to like the yellow fields that he's painted, which were beautiful. And there's like a couple of beautiful women like on the piano and these females in these gorgeous gowns that he painted. So great. Because it's also like this movie's in the style of the way that Van Gogh painted. So it's just beautiful. And you kind of see some of the images that he did, like woman cutting flowers, the doctors in Paris, the delivery person. I love that Vincent was just like carrying his art around to the doctor's office. I mean, that's essentially like what we do with our phones. I definitely like will sit when I'm waiting in a doctor's room and like work on some art pieces and stuff on my phone, like editing photos and things. So I will look at art on my phone. So essentially we're just doing the same thing. And so a bunch of people are like over people being sad about Vincent because they're the worst. You know, they're just not here from it. These dresses are so beautiful. I would want to wear these painted dresses all the time. I just love this style of fashion. I don't know how they survived if it was this hot. I like to think maybe global warming is real and now it's called climate change, but because maybe now it's so hot that it would be hard to wear dresses like that, or they just like sweated it out. No wonder they were so skinny. They're just like bathing in sweat. Maybe they just didn't sweat as much back then. I don't really understand what's happening. There's a beautiful like black and white sequence too. So Vincent, after he tried to kill himself, kind of like wrapped up his wound and he sought help. And the doctor was very angry and they didn't move the bullet because they thought it was like hopeless. And the fever kind of made him weak. It's very interesting. He didn't necessarily die from his attempt. He died from the infection he got from his attempt. And so they argue that like maybe Van Gogh didn't want to die, you know? And Theo was like trying to like hold his hands, and I think there was this one woman who kind of had a crush on him too, and it's a little sad. It was a little sad. And it's just like peering in the doorway and watching your brother die, I can't imagine. I cannot imagine. I'd be so sad if my brother died. I love the yellow coat in this movie. It's super wild. But yeah, they like go to Vincent's room and like this is all about if you're very obsessed with Van Gogh, you'll like it because there's a lot of tidbit facts here and kind of like how his life was, but through his like artistic eyes. And Vincent would like go and he would stand and paint in the rain. It's like when they say filming rain or shine, and he would paint day in and day out no matter what the weather was. And he just kind of kept to himself. He was very close to his brother. He would sleep, write letters, read fat books. He was very, very intrigued by nature. He liked to go out before dawn because there was a special kind of light. There was a lot of life in the area that he was, so he would watch people and then sometimes paint them. In this movie, people open up so quickly, and it was just kind of like Vincent Van Gogh painting magic, like literally. It's sad that he felt that way because you think that if you had like the artistic lens that Van Gogh had, the world would be happy, right? But anyway, crows would go and steal Vincent's lunch. It's a pretty lonely existence. But I guess some thieving crows would brighten up people's day. I would kind of laugh if a bird stole from me. I would not like it, but especially crows. I don't trust crows. Sorry to any crows listening to this. Didn't mean to upset you. So Van Gogh had kind of no luck with women. And there was this one lady that he did have an interest to. He was twice her age. So he's maybe a bit toxic there, or he just had a very youthful spirit. And he would take a boat and they would fool around on a boat. I'm trying to be on that vibe. That sounds fun. Fool around on a boat. In those skirts, you know? The doctor, I think it's like the doctor's daughter that he was interested in. And the doctor was like very protective of his daughter. Probably because at that time, Vincent was deemed a madman, you know? Really sad. We look at him as this like creative genius, but he was, I mean, in an insane asylum, like you have to be pretty low. I've been in one, and it's not easy. If you weren't crazy beforehand, you're definitely crazy during and a little bit after you get out. And Vincent would go to church sometimes, not too much, and would kind of like drink and laugh at God, which is not the best in those times, probably not the best ever. Anytime you deny any sort of culty religion, its believability, it gets a bit dicey. Definitely gets a bit dicey. So now they put flowers, I think it's the one woman who puts flowers every day on Vincent's grave out of respect. And painting was actually part of Vincent's treatment, which I also thought was nice. I definitely colored a lot when I was in my sock ward. So the brother has a baby that's pretty ill, and he's kind of getting fed up of Vincent. You know, canvas is very expensive. He's painting on tea towels. Started arguing over money because the brother bought all the painting things. And the letter that the mailman's son was delivering was very urgent, and it was from Vincent about how he'd run out of paints and that he had a big order and lots of painting planned. And I think that the one guy just like opens up the letter because he's like not allowed to read somebody's letter. That's super illegal. But I guess he was like bar fighting, so the standard is low for this dude. So bonding with Van Gogh's mental illness, he's like, as sick as I am, So he kind of retraces the path and realizes that it's a very long way to walk, which I also agreed in watching it too. I was like, wow, and then they commented on it. I love that in movies when you think the same thing as the character and you're like, oh, I guess we have similar thought processes. Or thank you for knowing that the audience was not dumb. Then the mailman's son like kind of pretends to do suicide to discover. And man, it's like crazy. He like did it in nature where you would like hear the shot in the barn, and now people think that that barn is haunted, of course, because people, whenever somebody dies, they think that they're a ghost. Which I don't always think is the case, but could happen. What do I know? So then they discovers that kids are shooting rats, and maybe that's what happened. Like maybe somebody accidentally shot a rat, maybe because they want to like not believe that he killed himself or how it was. And they do say that the way the gunshot is a bit weird. I wonder if his brother was trying to kill him. That's what I think, right? It was like the brother's like, I can't afford you anymore, and like shot him, which would be crazy. Or it was the jealous doctor, he could get really wild with this. Or maybe he just did, and it's sad. I think everybody wants to just deny, like, oh, it can't be a suicide. It had to be the cruelty of other people. I mean, and the hard thing is to recognize, like, too, if somebody committed suicide, it still is the cruelty of other people. There was, like, a sadness there. But it's also sad because he, like, lost his belief in life and, like, couldn't listen to super find it enough. So Yellowcoat, mailman's son, is, like, fighting people who are calling him, like, a Nazi boy. And he sleeps outside. And poor people were, kind of picking on Van Gogh as, like, the village idiot. And they go to this, like, one doctor who's saying, like, suicidal people, they'll shoot in the head, the temple, the mouth, the heart. And he's like, this one is a bit of a too low angle. We would have had to like point and then throw your body into it or be further back, which is interesting. I wonder if that's just rumor. It's so hard because we don't have like record of things. Like now with the internet, we have like a lot of mixed opinions. But somewhere in there, we might get the truth. We definitely document things, I think, way more easily than we used to. Used to like go tap on a cave a bunch with chalk things. I don't even know really what cave painting things are made out of. Like crushed berries? I'm very confused. How did they last so long? I feel like if I put some crushed berries on the wall, it would not stain as long. Maybe I'm just not cave painting right. So then they wonder if like the village idiot shot Vincent, but they argue that, he's an idiot, not a murderer. Which is like me. Honestly, my tagline, maybe. And Theo probably feels not important, even though it's probably due to Theo that we even know Vincent's works. So they were trying to pretty much like distract Vincent, prevent his masterpieces, which kind of made him not well because obviously art was the source. And the like kind of withdrawal from his brother soured things. And no one really blames Theo, but I kind of feel like they should, but I also understand Theo's side in retrospect. And the one guy is wondering if he was shot in despair or if the drunken teenager shot him. And they're kind of like, well, even if he died, the result is the same. But I wonder if it is. I honestly feel like part of his story, and I wonder that too about like a lot of the greats. We remember Marilyn Monroe, was her death a suicide? We remember Kurt Cobain, we remember Sylvia Plath. It's like, would they have such a legacy if it wasn't for the suicide? Same with like Robin Williams. Like I do think that there's something, you put like a legacy on suicide, which is a legacy that's too late, The mailman's son is like flipping out because he is afraid that someone got away with murder. And I guess he like sort of wants to prove that he's good for something like Vincent. And then they kind of learn, that no detail of life is too small or too humble to be appreciated and loved. And the one guy is kind of in this conflict because he's like delivering a letter from a dead man to a dead man because I guess Theo had died, which is also very sad. So I guess maybe it's like Theo's widow who is responsible for this art. But I guess Theo was a responsible man. The health of a great artist was a burden and it wasn't very peaceful for them. But the soul in the artist was worth it. And that Vincent just had a lot of melancholia with just like 6 hours of just joy and despair. The one doctor saw him every day, and when he left the asylum, there was hope, but he was definitely surrounded by loneliness and deeply afraid of the future, his own and Theo's. And he wasn't really responding to medicine. No one really wanted to buy his paintings. Now he has, I think, somewhat of what one would call a small fortune, or actually a very, very large fortune. I wonder who gets the Van Gogh paintings now. That would be interesting. Comment below if you know. But yeah, Vincent just felt like he was just bringing down his brother, that he was kind of doing the improbable. He was giving his ear to the horror, just like rock bottom in many ways. And then it's still curious as to me why they would say that he shot himself. I guess not to blame anybody because he's already dead, but it's also like if there is a murderer out there that somebody should know for safety before they go murder other people, but also maybe you can't prevent death anyway. I don't know. I don't think murderers should stop. It's more fun things to do. Just chill. And Theo, I think, worried that, he was to blame, which kind of caused, I think, his death as well, which is very sad, dying of a broken heart, honestly. But I guess also Theo had syphilis, so either that killed him, probably plus the like stress of like financial and physical. And yeah, he was just had 2 weeks of bedside dying, which is brutal. And they were collecting all the letters to publish them, which is pretty cool. I don't know who profited, the mailman or Theo's widow, but collecting them to publish them is smart. And I think that's how we got this movie. And then the mailman's son decides to enlist since he's good at fighting and now he knows what he's fighting for. And while he doesn't quite understand all about the Vincent van Gogh, he's still like reminded of him. And he feels sad that his life was kind of snuffed out of the accident. But he knows that people will appreciate what Van Gogh did. And I think they do with the quote of like, the sight of the stars always makes me dream, which is my favorite. I love that. Even saying that, it's such power. You should just say that before you go to bed at night. I feel like that will bring you good vibes. The painting comparisons at the end were very cool. I think the first painting sold at 800, which great, that's a good freaking deal. And the one girl who was dating Vincent never married after Vincent, and I think she died at an old age. Here's some more Vincent facts that I also put at the end of my notes. He worked for an art dealer, and when he was working for the art dealer, that was the happiest time of his life because he was earning a considerable salary, which is also one of the things they say, like, you're not like necessarily chemically depressed if you're like missing having a job for your life, because that is very stressful. So you can't like really rate your mental health until you get into a place of stability. So anyway, back to Van Gogh's happiest time of his life. He was like earning a salary more than his father, which is always a great bag. And then he fell in love with his like landlady's daughter, Eugene Lawyer, but she just wasn't really interested in his romantic advances, and she was already secretly engaged. Van Gogh produced close to 900 paintings in pretty much 9 years, so he did 100 paintings a year, which is amazing. At 27, he was quit the unsuccessful career as an art dealer, even though he was making money, so I don't understand it was unsuccessful, I guess because he wasn't known. He's also a missionary as well, as I mentioned before, but he decided to concentrate on his painting and drawing, and he would use peasant and farmers as models and flowers and landscapes, and then himself because he was too poor to pay his subjects. He wrote 800 letters in his lifetime, mainly to his brother, who was also his closest friend. The Red Vineyard went for 400 francs in Belgium 7 months before his death. His most expensive painting, Portrait of Dr. Ganchett, was sold for 148.6 million in 1990. Woo, that's the same money that he doesn't even get to benefit from. What is capitalism? But anyway, so he had mutilated himself with a razor after an argument with his friend Paul Gongin. I'm not saying that right. During a Christmas. So, Christmas emotions are very high. Honestly, I would maybe cut off my ear in Christmas. And then he ran and presented it to a prostitute. So he didn't cut off his ear for a prostitute. I guess he just was triggered by the fight and did that. It's very wild. But there's some German historians who are saying that they think that his friend took off Vincent's lobe when they were fencing, and the self-mutilation was concocted between the two to avoid the embarrassment and arrest, even though, I don't know, it's weird. It still feels like they would be arrested and it's still embarrassing. But anyway, he immortalized his wound in the self-portrait with the bandaged ear. Starry Night, his most famous work, was painted at the asylum. He voluntarily admitted himself there to recover from a nervous breakdown, which resulted in the ear-cutting accident. The painting is supposed to depict the view from his window, which I think is, wow, insane. So when Van Gogh was shot, it was shot in the chest. There was no witnesses, and the gun that he shot with was never found. He committed the act either in the wheat field he had been painting in or a barn. He was able to stagger to where he was staying. 2 doctors tended to him, but the bullet could not be removed because there was no surgeon available, and he died from the infection of his wound. And Theo really thought that his great artist was tied to him being a great human being, and he died 6 months later, which was so sad. And Theo's late wife, Joanna, dedicated herself to collecting her late brother's in-law's works, And thanks to her diligence, it began to receive recognition. So it was a woman who was responsible for Vincent van Gogh's success. She was the marketer, not enough recognition. And she named her child after the stillborn brother, which was very sweet. Theo also was an art dealer, which is interesting. Probably also tense in their brotherly arguments. And the reason also Van Gogh didn't want to become a minister is that he just didn't want to take the Latin proportion of his exam because he thought it was a dead language for peasants. So he's just being really judgy and basically an artist. Yeah, he definitely had a strong, difficult personality, they say too. They definitely think that he had a penchant for self-martyrdom and he alienated many fellow painters because he would argue a lot. Sounds like he's probably like bipolar, definitely a lot of antisocial behavior. Obviously, I'm not a psychiatrist, so don't quote me. You'd have to ask the real doctor who is probably dead, but you could probably research it. And hey, feel free to share the research below. Anyway, when he was working as a missionary, though, he did experience a spiritual awakening that inspired him to relinquish all of his worldly possessions, and he began living as a pauper. Church authorities thought this was inappropriate. The church is the worst. But anyway, he was discharged from his position, which is literally what I feel like Christianity is like, oh, give your money to the church because we're doing this stuff for you. But then you like actually begin martyrdom and they're like really judgy. Yeah, when he did shoot himself too, it was not a clean shot and he didn't die until nearly 30 hours afterwards. Oh, 30 hours of suffering. That's awful. And because Theo was close to Vincent, Theo's wife had her husband reburied next to Vincent. And unfortunately, much of Vincent van Gogh's work has been lost, as many people who owned his work thought it to be worthless, and his own mother is said to have disposed full of crates of his paintings, which is so sad. You know, I guess maybe you should keep your kids' drawing on the fridge because it might be worth something one day, you know? Maybe art is something worth holding on to, but yes, let me know. What did you think about Loving Vincent? Please feel free to follow me and donate, and I appreciate you so much for listening. Don't ever kill yourself is my also sentiment that I want to end on because there's so much things in life worth living. I have struggled. Heck, I had a suicide attempt even like a couple of weeks ago. I don't know when this will come out, so probably by then months. But yeah, you know, like and it's a hard process when you feel that way. And I've definitely had ups and downs. And I will say the more you fight for stability and the more you learn that you are worthy in this world, you are worthy even when you don't believe it. Life is easier when you do. So just believe it because it's just silly. Who gets to determine your worth anyway? You can. So just be nice to you. I love you. I'm always here. Just always feel free to message me if you just want to vent. I think it's so important to have a community and someone to be for there. And I definitely know the times that I did not have somebody, and those were rough times. I didn't love them. So I love you a lot. Always stick around. People are always going to love you. Goodbye. Have a good one. Please like and subscribe and comment.